Welcome to the Vermont Public General Election Debates. I'm Mikaela Lefrak, one of the hosts of Vermont Edition. Today, it's the third in our series of debates ahead of the 2022 midterm election on November 8th. Now, you don't have to wait until then to vote. Ballots have already gone out in the mail to all registered Vermont voters. Now, today's debate is between the major party candidates running for governor of Vermont. Joining me live in the Vermont Public Studio in downtown Winooski is the Republican nominee for the office, incumbent Phil Scott of Berlin. He was first elected governor in 2016 and is now seeking a fourth term. Phil Scott, welcome.
Thank you very much for having us on.
Also in our studio today is Democratic nominee Brenda Siegel of Newfane. She's a State House advocate on issues like housing and substance use disorder, and she's also worked as a teacher and a choreographer. Brenda Siegel, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Here is the format that we are going to use today and for the rest of our 2022 general election debates. In the first segment, I'll ask common questions to both candidates. They'll each have 60 seconds to answer. In the second segment, the candidates will ask each other questions. They'll have 30 seconds to ask a question and 60 seconds to answer. Next, we'll turn to a series of questions submitted by Vermonters. Candidates will have 30 seconds to answer, and it's possible that I'll ask follow-up questions during any of these first three segments. Then we'll have a lightning round of questions with very brief answers, 10 seconds max. And we'll conclude with 1-minute closing statements from each candidate. All right, let's get started with some questions that I have for both of you. Now, please limit your answers to 60 seconds, and a reminder that I may ask some follow-ups. Let's begin with a question about climate change. Now, about 40% of Vermont's greenhouse gas emissions come from vehicles on our roads, and more than a third come from heating homes and buildings. Now, the state's Democratic lawmakers and you, Governor Scott, have differed on how to curb emissions. And I'm thinking in particular here of the clean heat standard, which you vetoed last session. Now, Governor Scott, if reelected, how do you plan to lower emissions from transportation and heating, and what is your benchmark for success?
Well, again, I know you touted the clean heat standard as an example of where we disagreed, but it wasn't about the clean heat standard, theoretically, because they were going to have the Public Utility Commission issue a clean heat standard. They didn't come up with one themselves. That was just the name of the bill. We do agree on many different provisions. For instance, electric vehicle electrification, something that I'm a big believer in, something we started with the VW settlement. We put in charging infrastructure to prepare ourselves for this, and we've been making strides ever since with electric public buses, with school buses, as well as trying to change our fleet in the state to electric vehicles. As well, weatherization, another piece that we agree on, because I believe that this both saves money for the homeowner, makes Vermont more affordable, but also reduces greenhouse gas emissions.
Well, Governor Scott, you brought up electric vehicles, particularly around public transportation, school buses, but for folks who are interested in buying an electric vehicle for personal use, but see that price tag and say, hey, that is just absolutely not possible for me and my family right now. What can the state do to help? What could you do to help?
Well, it's what we're doing to help, actually. We do have incentives, credit incentives as well, and we're not the only ones. The federal government has incentives, as well as some of Green Mountain Power has incentives. Burlington Electric has incentives. At one time, not too long ago, you could buy a Nissan Leaf with all the incentives for between $10,000 and $15,000, brand new. So these incentives work. We're trying to do everything we can. I believe with more competition, we are seeing the major manufacturers, whether it be Ford, has already announced that they're not going to have anything but electric vehicles in 2030, I believe, or 35. So that's the answer. More competition, the price will come down, batteries will become more efficient as well.
Thank you. And Brenda Siegel, same question to you. How would you propose reducing emissions, both around heating and transportation?
So we have to get out of the mindset that it's going to be done one electric vehicle at a time. Families like mine and families across the state can't afford $10,000 or $15,000 to get an electric vehicle. Even with incentives, it's not possible. And so I'm on the Public Transit Advisory Commission, and I've had a front row seat to what we could do to make changes here. We need to increase our public transportation. We need to support our small farms in transitioning to carbon sequestration and require our large farms to do the same. We have to make sure that our solutions, like heat pumps and solar panels and electric vehicles, can make it to low and moderate income families, because most of our state is low and moderate income families. And we have to have a Public Utilities Commission that is allowing the build of in-state renewable energy. Unfortunately, the Clean Heat Standard was a really strong move towards our 2030 goals, and the veto of that was really unfortunate, because it meant that our legislators, who had done a lot of hard work, taken a lot of testimony, and done research, we didn't all get to experience the outcome of that legislation.
Well, I did ask Governor Scott about the Clean Heat Standard, and I'm curious for your thoughts here, because as you know, it did pass in the legislature. Mm-hmm. Governor Scott vetoed it, but the legislature then failed to override that veto. So it doesn't have widespread support in the legislature. So I'm curious, if it comes back to the legislature, what changes do you think need to be made to it?
I would argue that it was 99 out of 100 votes. So I would argue that there is widespread support, and that the legislature has had to govern far too much by a 2/3 majority in the last 6 years. And we really need to have a governor that comes to the table and stays there until the work is done. Unfortunately, in this case, the governor's advisors gave him the wrong information, and his concerns had already been addressed in that bill.
Governor Scott, I'd love to hear your response.
Well, the only person they didn't ask about whether my concerns were satisfied was me. They just assumed that to be true, and you keep saying that it was my advisors that got the wrong information. I didn't have anyone. I meet with the legislative leadership every single week. They didn't come to me. Let me answer. They didn't come to me and ask me, "Are you okay with the solution we've come up with?" Never. Not a single thing. Didn't hear a peep.
Then it sounds
30
like,
seconds for you to answer.
Okay, great. Then it sounds thanks. Then it sounds like you could have told them if you meet with them every week. Well, if then they did address your concerns.
No,
so
they
did. And that you had the wrong information.
The only person that would know that is me, Brenda. The only one who would know that is me.
How can you say that? I do think we are going to move on here, because we have a lot to get to. Let's move on to a question about a relationship with both of your individual political parties. Now, Governor Scott, ahead of this debate, we received a number of questions from Vermonters about how you square your politics with those of the National Republican Party. One person pointed out that Republican politicians in other states have passed voting rights restrictions and abortion bans, stymied action on climate change, etc. And if you do not support those types of positions, why not run as an independent?
Well, I'm a fiscal conservative. I think there are a number of Republicans who I admire across the country, whether it be Governor Baker out of Massachusetts, Governor Hogan out of Maryland, Governor Romney, former Governor Romney, now Senator Romney out of Utah, John McCain. He was a Republican, but he bucked the party. He was a maverick. He did what he thought was right, and I continue to do the same. The party doesn't define me. I just view myself as a common sense, fiscally conservative Republican.
Well, now, Governor Scott, you have vocally disavowed the Trump wing of the Republican Party, and you've said that you voted for Joe Biden in the 2020 election. And many Vermonters might still remember when Vermont Senator Jim Jeffords left the Republican Party in 2001 to become an independent, and he also caucused with the Democrats. Do you feel at home on the same ticket as other Republican nominees in this election cycle in Vermont, like Gerald Malloy, H. Brooke Page, or do you feel like the Vermont GOP has, in a way, left you and the values that you've been espousing today?
Well, again, they don't define me. I determine who I am, and I've been consistent throughout. I think there are a majority of Vermonters that are moderate centrists. I think that's where most people are. And then you have folks on the further left, folks on the further right that get a lot of the attention, a lot of the headlines. But I think most Vermonters are centrist moderates just like me and care about taxes. They care about fiscal issues. They care about making government more efficient. And maybe they even agree with that government can't do everything for everyone.
Thank you. And Brenda Siegel, You have not held political office before, yet you're running again for the highest seat in state government. What do you make of the fact that leading Democrats in Vermont's legislature have repeatedly declined to run against Governor Scott?
You know, I think that it's a challenge to run in a race that is an uphill battle. And I've been clear this whole time, this is a tough fight. But there are Vermonters that are suffering all across this state that need us to do more, that need us to walk ourselves out of these crises. And I can't really speak to why other people have not run, but why I ran was because we need to move forward in the ways that best support Vermonters. And I mean all Vermonters, everyone from low-income folks to upper-middle-income folks, all of whom are struggling to survive right now across the state.
Now, I also wanted to ask you about some of the relationships that you have with major advocacy organizations across the state. Specifically, Vermont's largest child care advocacy organization, Let's Grow Kids. They have a political action arm that is telling voters to support Governor Phil Scott. Now, you would seem to be a natural fit for this type of advocacy group's endorsement, but they're supporting your opponent. And I'm curious if you think that you might have work to do to strengthen some of these allegiances.
You know, I think that there's a strong power of incumbency in this situation. Anyone who gets federal dollars would have been able to spend them in the last 6 years. But we have to commit, not make a goal. My opponent has made it only a goal to making sure that our families only pay 10% of their income towards childcare. We have to support our small child care centers. Right now, the legislature allocated a bunch of funding, and the thinking was that these small child care centers were going to front the money for those bonuses. And we need to make sure that that money actually gets out the door when it's allocated. And this past year, I was able to support a small school that was about to close in a 2-week turnaround with bringing community members together in my hometown of Brattleboro and making sure that that school survived. So I think that we're talking about the power of incumbency in this situation.
And I want to give you 15 seconds to answer one more quick follow-up question here. I've heard you note this distinction between a commitment and a goal. Can you elaborate exactly what that means or what you're asking of Governor Scott or someone in the governor's position in terms of that commitment towards childcare?
Sure. Oftentimes when we say, when we're working on political stuff and we say goal, we say, sure, that's a goal. We can move forward this way. But a commitment means we are going to get there. And that's what needs to happen for our workforce. That's what needs to happen for our families.
Governor Scott, your response to that critique?
Well, again, I agree with goals. I agree with incentives. I try to avoid mandates, and it appears that many of what Brenda is talking about are mandates, forcing people to do things. I would rather lift people up and lead them in the right direction. And we've done a lot of great work over the last 6 years. And it isn't always about incumbency. I haven't been an incumbent forever. And so we've had a great relationship with the child care advocates and done a lot of good work. And we're going to do a lot of good work in the future.
Thank you. Well, I want to move on now and talk about how Vermont uses land and the collection of development regulations known as Act 250. What reforms to Act 250 would help the state balance conservation with new development? Brenda Siegel, we'll begin with you.
Sure. I think that the first thing that we have to do is we have to fully staff our Act 250 office. Our Act 250 office has been intentionally understaffed, which is making it very hard for us to move permits forward across the state. We can come up with, as the legislature did this last session but was vetoed, forest blocks and city centers to make sure that we are still supporting the land that we all love so much, but we're able to also build the housing and the development that we need right now in this state.
Right, and let's dive into that development a bit more. Now, I know that you've advocated for aggressive measures to build the housing that the state needs, but building new houses takes months, takes years, frankly, and it's not a short-term fix. So would you support Act 250 reform that makes it easier to build in Vermont's downtowns and village centers? And I'm thinking specifically here of funding municipal water and sewage upgrades.
Absolutely. That's part of my plan that I released a few weeks ago on housing. We have to have a strategic plan for the short and long term, and each part of it has to address emergency, transitional, and permanent housing. We need to be realistic that the housing that we're putting online right now is not going to meet the need now or in 5 years, and we have to make sure that we are meeting the need and having a temporary fix right now so that people remain housed.
And Governor Scott, what specific Act 250 reforms would you support?
Well, we've had a number of initiatives that have had support from environmental groups and included, from what I've heard from Brenda's plan, that's exactly what we were doing in the bills that we proposed and we had agreement upon. But we didn't have agreement with the legislature, and unfortunately, some of that didn't make it through. So we just need to modernize Act 250 to make it easier to utilize. We need more communication. It can't be different from one district to another. There has to be consistency. Act 250 as well shouldn't be used just to block development. It should be used to improve development. So we have a lot of different initiatives. Again, we had some agreement with some environmental groups on this, and we thought we were going to get it across the finish line, but the legislature didn't agree. We'll go back at it. The bill that they passed was worse than what we had, and many Democrats agreed with that. So we'll go back to the drawing board. But we can't just focus on Act 250. It's about zoning as well, other permits within the Agency of Natural Resources, as well as federal permits. So it's all together, and Act 250 sometimes gets all the blame, and it isn't all their fault.
Well, I do want to ask you about another program. Vermont funds an emergency housing program, but the eligibility for it is much stricter than the federal emergency rental assistance that many Vermonters relied on during the height of the pandemic. I'm curious if you would commit to easing restrictions and funding an expansion of the statewide program as a short-term solution to homelessness and to housing issues in the coming winter and spring.
Well, again, this was an emergency program that was put forth by the government to get us through the pandemic. We were, at that point in time, we had 90,000 people unemployed. We were trying to keep people separated, to keep people stay home, to stay safe. They weren't able to make a living. They weren't able to pay their rent. And we wanted to make sure we kept them whole, kept the landlords whole as well, kept the apartments going, kept the economy going. But the pandemic's over. So we have to go back to something that is much more reasonable, something that we can afford. We can't afford everything that was provided during that time. We're spending $12 million a month on with federal help. To do this. Now, they have changed the rules and they said, we're going to end this program. Pandemic's over. We heard President Biden say that. Pandemic's over. We need to go to something different. We can't afford to do this any longer.
All right, well, let's move on. We have a lot of other topics to get to today. Let's talk about the opioid crisis. Now, Vermont has broken its own records for overdose deaths 2 years in a row now. And I know that you both support some of the same ideas to address this crisis, including what are known broadly as harm reduction strategies. But some say these strategies don't go far enough. Canada, meanwhile, is pushing the boundaries of the public health response to the overdose crisis. There, people can use street drugs in supervised consumption sites or get prescriptions as a safer alternative to street drugs. Do you think these strategies could help Vermonters, even if they're not currently sanctioned by the U.S. Justice Department? And Brenda Siegel, will begin with you.
Yes, in fact, in overdose prevention sites, there have been lots of overdoses, but not a single death. They have cleaned up needles, safe syringes on the street. They have reduced hepatitis C and HIV in areas where they're used, which also reduces our costs overall. In 2017, and that's before we had all of these overdoses, the state, it cost $1.8 billion of our state GDP to have people suffering with substance use disorder in our state. And so spending the money that it takes to address the overdose crisis is extremely important for Vermonters, but I want to go a step further. In March of 2018, my nephew, Siegel, died of an overdose. He was the son of my brother, who died just over 20 years before him, also while using heroin. They both suffered from bipolar and extreme trauma, and with 20 years between them, they could not get the support they needed in this state. My nephew would have survived in an overdose prevention center, and we need to make sure that we have those supports so that we aren't burying our family members, because once our family members die, we do not get them back.
Would safe injection sites work in such a rural state such as Vermont? And how much funding would we be willing to divert towards them?
Yes, there are several city or town centers where there already is a concentrated population of people who are using injecting drugs, and that's happening in front of our children on the streets, and this is also a way to protect that. And there is, in other countries, we've used things like mobile units where we bring the harm reduction centers to the communities where it's happening. Because in my hometown of Newfane, on Green Up Day, I found Suboxone wrappers in the woods. We know that it's happening in every single corner of our state, and I so deeply know the impact of that on our families. And if we don't focus on harm reduction first, we are not going to walk ourselves out of this crisis.
Thank you. And Governor Scott, same question to you. Do you support some of the strategies that our neighbors to the north are trying in terms of preventing and curbing the opioid epidemic?
Well, over the last 6 years, we've increased efforts and investment in all areas of this issue. And fentanyl now is driving the deaths that we're seeing. So I believe that we need to go after distribution points. They're preying upon our youth here in Vermont, and some of it is targeted at Vermont because of some of our rules, regulations, and laws. I think we have 4 legs of the stool, and I believe prevention, treatment, recovery, and enforcement are 4 equal legs of the stool that we need to continue with. I don't believe using government injection sites is the answer for Vermont, not at this time, because we know what works and we need to put our limited resources towards that. I don't want to take money away from those proven, the hub and spoke model and so forth that we've been successful with here in Vermont, to do something with an experiment in Vermont, in a rural state like Vermont in particular.
Well, Governor Scott, medicated assisted therapy is now a common practice to help people struggling with opioid addiction, but not too long ago, it was viewed with skepticism as an experimental practice. So in some ways, don't you think experimentation is necessary to meet the challenges of this ever snowballing public health crisis?
Well, again, if we want to experiment and leave behind strategies that we've proven to be successful, because we were successful before the pandemic hit. And if we want to do that, then that's for the legislature to decide and for me to decide whether we want to go forward or not. I don't believe government injection sites work for a rural state like Vermont. And I don't see that as being proven throughout the country.
Thank you. We are going to have to move on. Inflation is a major concern for Vermonters right now, and in the dairy industry in particular, farmers operating on already slim margins are struggling to afford fuel, grain, and other necessary supplies. Now, particularly in the organic dairy market, the region's main cooperative says it can't raise pay prices for farmers, even though the cost of feed is up between 35 and 50%, which is pretty staggering. So how can the state better support dairy farmers during this period of inflation? Governor Scott, we'll begin with you.
Yeah, the dairy industry obviously is suffering through inflation. It was suffering before. We are losing farms every single day. I think farming, agriculture is the backbone of our state. I believe during the pandemic as well, that we saw firsthand how important it is for us to be as self-sufficient as possible. We need to feed ourselves, and our farmers provide for that. So we need to continue to help them, to utilize their products in every way we can. We have a lot to be proud of in Vermont. The quality of the products that we produce are far better than many others across the country. We're increasing our markets so that we can sell them in other markets. We've done a lot of work there. We have a long ways to go. But the inflation that we're seeing now, fuel in particular, feed prices, across the board, everything, machinery, everything is going up. It's very difficult for farmers, but we continue to do everything we can to support them, including ARPA money that we've forwarded to them as well.
Right. Well, as we all know, Vermont's cannabis market, stay with me here, just opened up. And the way it's set up, sellers are required to work with small growers for a percentage of their business. Can you see a similar setup working for the organic dairy industry?
Well, again, I mean, the organic market was somewhat tailored the same way. A smaller market, smaller number of producers, and smaller number of herd. So it did work, but people have to be willing to buy that at a higher cost. And we'll see how this works with our cannabis market as well.
Thank you. And Brenda Siegel, same question too.
So our dairy industry is part of the fabric of Vermont, and it's really true that we need to make sure that our dairy farmers are at the table and we're asking them what they need, and that's informing our decisions. But we also have to remember that our dairy farmers and our dairy farms are not just commodities for Vermont. They are people that are part of the fabric of our economy. They are human beings who are losing their life's work and generational land. And we have to focus on how we better support the ones who want to transition to another type of farming into that type of farming, and the ones who want to stay in that industry to help support them in doing things like paying higher wages, making sure that people they bring to work on their farms can access housing in our state, and supporting a stronger industry in that way. And yes, it would be great for them to be working with our small farms, because we really have a lot of small farms across the state. And we have to do it in a way that is sustainable and supports them the best.
Can you give an example of how you would do that?
Well, I have not met with, as I haven't had the opportunity of being the governor, but I think that we do have to, when I've talked to dairy farmers across the state, what they have told me is that they need better support in making the transitions that they have to make to give higher wages, to have paid family and medical leave, and so that they can do better when they are selling their product as well.
Thank you. Well, this concludes the first segment of our debate. When we come back, the candidates will have an opportunity to ask each other questions. I'm Mikaela Lefrak, and this is the debate with the candidates for governor, live on Vermont Public.
Resistance was a necessity.
On making Black America.
Slaves were freed, but African Americans had not become truly equal citizens.
Organizing for change. And Black life, Black joy.
Creating these spaces or enclaves that allow us to feel good about ourselves and good in the world, even if the world isn't good.
Tonight at 8 on Vermont Public.
Hi, I'm Connor Cyrus, and I'll be moderating the upcoming Vermont Public debate in the race for Lieutenant Governor. Republican candidate Joe Benning will face off with Democratic candidate David Zuckerman. Learn more about where they stand on the issues that impact you and your community. If you want to submit a question for the candidate, send an email or voice memo to vote@vermontpublic.org.
Watch the Lieutenant Governor debate Thursday right here at 7 p.m. or streaming at vermontpublic.org at noon.
This is the Vermont Public Debate with the candidates for governor. I'm Mikaela Lefrak. With us today are Democratic candidate Brenda Siegel of Newfane and Republican Governor Phil Scott of Berlin. The candidates will now have an opportunity to ask each other questions. The questions should not be longer than 30 seconds, and the responses are limited to 60 seconds. And a reminder, you can ask a brief follow-up question. Brenda Siegel, first question to you.
In 2018, my nephew Kaya Siegel died of an overdose alone in a bathroom. In 2020, my friend's brother Roy died of an overdose alone in a bathroom. In 2021, my friend's son Kalijah died of an overdose alone. Over 845 Vermonters, people's mothers, fathers, siblings, friends have died of overdoses since you became governor alone. If they were at an overdose prevention site, they would have overdosed, but they would not have died. We know that because there's not been a single death in an overdose prevention center. My question is, were their lives worth saving?
Somewhat of an unfair question. We've all lost friends and family members through a number of different issues, including overdoses. We have done a lot of work together over the last 6 years. Governor Shumlin brought this to our attention years ago. We picked up on that. We've increased treatment throughout Vermont, access to treatment. But we have to be realistic. We are a rural state. We can't provide a government-run injection site in every single town and city in Vermont. We just don't have the resources to do that. So I think it's unfair to think that providing that would have saved all of their lives, but unfortunate that we lost them to begin with. I do not believe that we should be experimenting, taking those resources, precious resources, away from the measures we know work. And I don't believe that we should be legalizing small amounts of recreational drugs either. And I don't think we should be erasing the records of drug traffickers as well, which means they can buy a gun eventually by erasing those.
Thank you. Brenda, do you have a response?
Yeah, I think it was unfair that I had to bury my nephew. I think it was unfair that we had to bury my brother. So I don't think it's an unfair question for all the families that have lost people to ask you if their lives were worth saving, because many of their lives, if they were in overdose prevention centers, would have been saved. And so I'm not asking if we should divert resources away, because we need it all. I support recovery centers and places that we need to work on that. But I'm asking, were their lives worth saving?
Obviously, every life is precious. Everything we can do to save lives, and we have it across the board, whether it's drug overdoses, car crashes, whether it's to cancer. I lost a cousin yesterday due to cancer. I mean, it's across the board. Every single day, we have to make choices about what we can do, what we can afford to do, and where we want to focus. I believe the strategy that we've used is saving lives, as many lives as possible. I don't believe your strategy will save every single life. I just don't believe that.
It will save more.
Governor Scott, it's your turn to ask a question to Brenda Siegel.
You've made a lot of promises during these debates, whether it's housing proposals, which will cost hundreds of millions of dollars without federal aid in the future, child care proposals, another $100 million, paid family leave, universal school meals, probably another $100 million, universal primary care, about another $200 million. You've made a lot of promises, and those are all priorities of yours. Where are you going to come up with $500 million to $1 billion to pay for that? How are you going to pay for it?
So we're paying for this already. I'm going to start with housing. Right now, the national average for the cost per person experiencing homelessness is $35,000 a year. We have about 3,000 unhoused people in Vermont, and that means that we're spending about $105 million a year, $525 million in 5 years, and $1.05 billion in 10 years. If we address the housing crisis up front, then we end up actually saving taxpayer dollars money. And I can go through that with healthcare. We're paying $6.5 billion right now. In childcare, we're paying with our workforce not being available. And in the opioid use disorder, as I said before, we pay $1.8 billion in 2017, and that's before it exploded. So I would argue that we are actually spending quite a lot of money right now by not solving these problems. And it's time for us to be responsible with Vermont taxpayer dollars.
Well, I'm not saying we aren't solving this problem, because I believe we are. I'm asking you, because you're making all these promises, where are you going to come up with $500 million to $1 billion to do this? I know you're saying we're paying for it now, but there has to be a transition. You don't have a magic switch, do you, to do this?
No, you
to
have
make
to
it
come
happen?
up with it.
So you have to have money to invest. So where are you going to come up with that money?
Exactly. We have to invest, make strategic investments. One of my concerns about this administration is that you have not made those strategic investments. So over the last 2.5 years, we have paid over $5,000 a month for hotels, when instead we could have started with that plan and come up with a transitional plan so that people were housed and we were not wasting so much money and we had moved ourselves further out of this crisis. We can't just throw money at new builds and hope that it solves the problem. We have to have a plan that transitions us from point A to point B, and right now we do not have that.
Brenda Siegel, I want to give you a chance to ask a second question to Governor Scott.
Oh, sorry. You said in our last debate that people can't be evicted in the winter. They can be. Similarly, last year, you said you didn't think anyone living on the street was still living on the street and they were, and they are. And now 8,411 families are going to lose their emergency housing vouchers. For those people, losing their vouchers directly related to keeping their housing, and already 3,000 families have had their voucher ripped away. Meanwhile, you awarded $4.3 million to a company to create jobs that existed. Is it a good use of taxpayer dollars to instead of keeping people housed?
Well, I think we can do both. And we have to grow the economy, lift people up, and we have more jobs available today than we have people to fill them. So we need to provide the wraparound services to those who are homeless, provide them with the skills necessary. If they don't have the skills necessary for a job, we need to provide that for them. We have all of these programs in place to help them. We just need to make sure that we're getting to them. During the pandemic, obviously, that increased. I think you mentioned before we're spending $5,000 or something like that on hotels. I think you must have meant a whole lot more than that. But we can't afford to continue with the program we have today. We just don't have the resources to do that. That was during the pandemic. That was federal money, and that's ending. So we need to move on.
I said $5,000 per person per month. There's no transitional housing because that program ended on September 30th. Our shelters are full, and the pre-pandemic GA program has never been adequate and won't be now. At the last debate, you asked me about how we're going to read the budget, how we're going to go line by line in the budget and reevaluate priorities. This is what I'm talking about.
A question here, please.
When you're spending $4.3 million to a company that never creates the jobs that we give the money to, this is a place where we can reprioritize. Do you think it's responsible to give millions of dollars to companies that don't bring any new jobs to Vermonters?
Can you name the company?
I don't have the name written down right now, but
because I don't recall what you're talking about.
Okay.
So if you can tell me that,
sure,
that would be helpful.
Absolutely. I have it right here. It's gonna take our time. So it's the VPEC. It was a veggie grant.
That's the VPIC, right?
Yeah.
They made the grant, right?
They got the $4.3 million. I'm sorry, they made the grant.
To who?
And to Marvel.
To who?
Marvel eliminated jobs. Marvel Technology.
Oh, that was through IBM Global Foundries.
30 seconds to respond here.
Well, again, what was the question? Again, how
The
much?
question is, we are giving $4.3 million to Marvel Technologies who didn't create jobs. When we are talking about going line by line in the budget and reprioritizing, is this a good priority with our money over housing people who are experiencing homelessness and are going to lose their vouchers now?
Yeah, this was due with veggie grants and so forth. This is something the legislature had agreed to. We put it into this independent body to make these grants. And they have to fulfill those responsibilities. There's certain requirements that go along with that. If Marvel did not provide for that, then they don't get the money. So
they already got the money.
But they have to pay it back then, because there's a requirement within the grant process. So that is an independent body. That's not something that we did, but I do think it's a good idea. We need to keep the economy going. We have to pay for all the programs you want. If we don't have a healthy economy that brings in tax revenue, then we're not going to be able to take care of the very people that you're trying to help. So we have to have a healthy economy. And that's one small little piece of what we need to do to provide for a growing economy here in Vermont, because it's the only answer. We need the resources.
Governor Scott, we have time for you to ask one more question to Brenda Siegel.
Across the state, we're significantly understaffed in law enforcement. The state police are down in record numbers. We know Burlington, Richmond, Shelburne, Montpelier, and Brattleboro, I checked, and many others are understaffed and struggling to hire. Many in law enforcement cite morale as one of the biggest challenges. As someone like yourself who has advocated for defunding the police, do you think it's time to admit you were wrong and invest more in law enforcement to make our communities safer?
So what always that meant was funding police to do the work that police do, and funding social workers and people who work on substance use disorder and our communities to do what they do. That's always what that meant. Unfortunately, Republican talking points brought it to another realm. But what we do need to do right now is make sure that we are both supporting access to treatment for the root cause and supporting the police in what they need. And regardless, in Brattleboro, we do have a police chief, Chief Norma Hardy, who is working extremely hard, has been able to attract some police officers, has been able to retain more of her police officers, and she's working with our communities and the NAACP to make sure that she is building that support. And I think that those kinds of community policing models do work, are worth supporting, and we need to make sure that police, like all workers, are funded so that they can stay in those jobs and thrive and survive here.
Thank you. A response?
I agree. The chief is doing a great job in Brattleboro, not condemning any of her actions. She's doing well. But that workforce is down by 30 to 50%. So it's not working there either. There's a morale problem. You said defunding the police, defunding police. You didn't say anything about anything else. You said defund the police.
That's not actually true. I did talk about funding police do the work that police do and supporting our social work, mental health, and substance use treatment to do what they do. And reality, no, that's not what I said. With the work that we have to do is making sure that we address our root causes. When I looked at your plan on crime, the 10-point plan, it, in its initial phase, did not address mental health crisis. It did not address substance use disorder. It didn't address root causes. It was law and order. And we know that law and order alone is not going to address these crises. The majority of the gun crime that's happened in our state right now has happened to people with substance use disorder or suicides. And both of those need to be addressed.
Okay, we're going to have to stop here. We have questions from Vermonters next. I want to make sure we have time for those important questions. This concludes the second segment of our program. As I said, when we come back, the candidates will answer questions submitted to us by Vermonters. I'm Mikaela Lefrak, and this is the debate with the candidates for governor on Vermont Public.
One masterpiece mystery.
So Magnus knew his killer.
He had decided to make a new will.
I get everything.
You never mentioned that in London.
You stay out of my way.
There's no such thing as a coincidence.
The note, they're gone.
No files, nothing.
If someone really did push him off that tower, well, there'd have been plenty of volunteers.
Magpie Murders on Masterpiece Mystery.
Premieres Sunday at 9 on Vermont Public.
Hi, I'm Connor Cyrus, and I'll be moderating the upcoming Vermont Public debate in the race for Lieutenant Governor. Republican candidate Joe Benning will face off with Democratic candidate David Zuckerman. Learn more about where they stand on the issues that impact you and your community. If you want to submit a question for the candidate, send an email or voice memo to vote@vermontpublic.org.
Watch the Lieutenant Governor debate Thursday right here at 7 p.m. or streaming at vermontpublic.org at noon.
Welcome back to the Vermont Public Debate with the candidates for governor. I'm Mikaela Lefrak. Joining me live today in the Vermont Public Studio in downtown Winooski is Governor Phil Scott, the Republican incumbent, and Democratic nominee Brenda Siegel. It's time now for some questions from Vermonters, and thank you to everyone who submitted questions to us. And just a reminder to candidates, do please limit your answers to 30 seconds, and I'm going to be strict on this one here. Our first question is about working with the legislature from Irvin in Northfield.
Governor Scott, your veto on pension reform for teachers and public sector workers was overruled unanimously by the legislature. How can you say you're working with legislators when you can't even get members of your own party to sustain your veto? And Brenda Siegel, if elected, how would you use your veto power and coordinate with the legislature prior to issuing a veto?
Governor Scott.
Well, again, that was based on principle. The veto was, I wasn't a part of the process completely. I had asked the legislature to take up some other initiatives as well to make sure that we were fixing the problem. They put a Band-Aid on it. I believe in 5 or 6 years, we're going to be back to the drawing board, back in the same position we were in before, which is unfortunate. When I veto something, though, I tell them exactly what I would need to move forward. And we've been successful in some of those initiatives.
Thank you. And Brenda Siegel.
Unfortunately, that took, I just want to say that veto was wasting of taxpayer dollars, especially as a performative veto. In addition to that, I would say that What I've been able to do with the legislature is work very collaboratively on sometimes very complicated bills that are not necessarily the easy yeses in the beginning. And we've been able to work with Republicans, Democrats, and progressives, and I'm known to sit at that table until the work is done so that we can find a compromise and move forward.
Thank you. Our next question is about childcare from James in South Burlington.
As a lifelong Vermonter and dad of a 4-year-old, my question is, what is your plan to address the early child care funding crisis so that we can support our early educators and make their teaching positions wage competitive?
Brenda Siegel.
First of all, we need to, again, commit to making sure that our families are only paying 10% of their income towards childcare. Additionally, we need to support funding for childcare education initiatives, for early education initiatives, and which we have some of, but we need to do more so that there is no risk, so that people have paid family and medical leave and benefits and high wages when they come out. And we need to make sure that we are working with our families to support having childcare in the communities that they need and the hours that they need. And in order to do that, we have to make sure that there's housing and benefits for those folks.
Governor Scott.
Well, again, I've been an advocate for early care and learning from the very beginning. I believe it's a cradle-to-career approach. There's a lot of money in the system when we have over $1 billion we're spending for education. So what I am advocating for is to use different strategies for within the system itself, but also take advantage. I propose the Wayfair decision. I propose to use all the money from the Wayfair decision, that was the online sales tax money, for childcare. The legislature turned me down, and that would have been $30 million a year right now.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Ananda Rupa in Arlington. They ask, Governor, how will you support the resettlement effort of Afghan refugees, especially given the lack of affordable housing? Of course, we'll be asking that to both of you, not just the governor, but Governor Scott, you can go first.
Yeah, again, we have, and I would say down in Brenda's region, in particular, we have a lot of refugees from Afghanistan that have landed there. We have a moral obligation to make sure that we accept as many as possible. I had asked the former administration, the Trump administration, to increase our allotment. We never received a response on that. I did the same with the Biden administration, and they have increased our allotment. So we are using that, again, from a moral perspective, responsibility, but also pragmatically. We need more people. We need more diversity here in the state.
Thank you. Brenda Siegel.
I also really do support that, and in my area, there's some incredible activist and advocacy organizations that are really doing the work right now, and I'm really just proud of the people that I know that are working so hard on that. I am a little concerned that in many areas of the state, people who are refugees, who don't know the language and don't have transportation, are being sometimes housed in places that are extraordinarily rural, and they don't have access to grocery stores because of it and other types of support. So that's a little bit extra work that we need to do to make sure that we're not doing that to folks who don't have resources.
All right, we do have time to squeeze in a brief lightning round before the end of this debate. Now, candidates, please keep your answers as short as possible, 10 seconds or a couple words, please. Question number 1, do you think Vermont's laws regulating short-term rentals like Airbnb should be tighter, looser, or stay the same? Governor Scott.
I'd say somewhere between staying the same and could be tightened up a bit.
Thank you. Brenda Siegel.
They definitely need to be tightened so that we get revenue from those, better revenue from those sources.
Thank you. Do you support efforts to legalize sports gambling in Vermont? Brenda Siegel.
I think we have to do a full analysis of what that's going to look like, but it's happening right now, and so any efforts we can make to better put it in the light so that people can get help when they need it is better.
Governor Scott.
Absolutely. Over the last 3 or 4 years, we've advocated every single year for this, and finally it looks like it's going to come to fruition.
Thank you. Would you support a proposal to limit the governor's role to 4 years in office, Governor Scott?
I think 4 years is necessary, yes.
At this time, I think we need to stick with 2 years.
Now, Brenda Siegel, you have criticized Governor Scott on issues like housing and the response to the opioid crisis. Can you name one policy you agree with him on? And Governor Scott, I'll ask the same of you.
Refugee resettlement.
I would say, we agree with the goals in terms of like our opioid misuse and overdoses and so forth. The goal is the same. How we get there is different.
Thank you. Please name one individual action you have taken to lower your own carbon footprint, Governor Scott.
Whether it's the electrical vehicle for our state security that drives me around, but also I live that. I recycle. I have a solar panel. I do everything we can. We keep our heat down to 58. I mean, we do everything.
That is very cold. Brenda Siegel.
I recycle and I use composting as much as I can. Unfortunately, some of the solutions I'd like to use, like solar panels, heat pumps, are not available to me as someone who is struggling financially.
Thank you. And what is one significant issue or policy about which you have changed your mind, Brenda Siegel?
You know, drug policy, I would say at the beginning of my family's journey, I felt very differently and had a lot of similar drug war types of beliefs. And because I learned the up-to-date science and data, I changed my mind.
Governor Scott.
I would have to say probably the gun policy and some of the changes we made back in 2016, 17, which disappointed a lot of people, but I thought it was necessary.
Now, Vermont is the only New England state that applies the renewable label to large hydropower producers like Hydro-Quebec, Should Vermont continue to recognize this type of hydropower as a renewable energy source?
Yes.
Absolutely not. It displaces Indigenous people.
And a follow-up here, do you support updating the state's renewable energy standard to cap large hydropower in favor of more local wind and solar power?
Yes.
We're going to need it all.
Name another state's governor who you admire, Governor Scott.
Governor Baker from Massachusetts.
And why?
He just is a very straight and narrow, he's just a great person that does for the people. He works for the people, and he just wants good government, and I try and follow his lead.
Brenda Siegel.
Governor Mills, Janet Mills in Maine.
Why is that?
She has done a really good job of listening to advocates and bringing them to the table and supporting them around all of these things, drug policy, housing. She's really been incredible.
She's very humorous as well.
She is.
Well, we'll end with one more question and we'll make it a fun one. What is your favorite Vermont town to visit, Brenda Siegel?
Oh, boy, to visit. Gosh, that's hard. I've been to so many. Let's see. I think that my favorite Vermont town to visit is the Northeast Kingdom.
We gotta be quick here.
Sometimes Burlington, because my son is there.
All right, Governor Scott.
Elmore.
Elmore? All right, we did it. Time now for 1 minute closing statements from each candidate. Now, the order was determined randomly before the show, and Brenda Siegel, you're going to start us off.
Okay. In the last 6 years, the things that matter most to Vermonters have not gotten better, they've gotten worse. Vermont has not become more affordable, it's become less. The housing crisis has been barreling at us, and there is no plan. We've seen the most overdose death in the history of our state, and the governor is vetoing the bills. The climate crisis is exploding, and we have a Public Utilities Commission that is stopping progress. What I know is that there are solutions to the problems we face. We don't have to throw our hands up anymore. Together, we can have safe and strong communities. This is a tough fight, but it's not even close to the toughest fight I've had to face in my life, and I am still standing. I know there are Vermonters all across this state who have to get up every day and fight anyways, even though it's hard, and I'm inviting all of you to join me and your neighbors and your community members to build a brighter future for our children and the Vermont that we all love so much. Because our children are watching, and they need to know that we're ready for this moment. I'm Brenda Siegel, and I'd be proud to serve as your next governor.
Governor Scott.
Whether it's managing a once-in-a-century crisis or building a budget that lives within our means, being governor is about making tough decisions. Sometimes there are no easy or perfect solutions, so you end up weighing your options and making a decision to the best of your ability and based on your experience. And after years of press conferences, I think many of you know me well enough to know I make decisions based on the facts and on what I believe is right and what will help everyday Vermonters and their families the most. What I won't do is overpromise just to get your vote. What I will do is to continue to lead with integrity, respect, and civility. We have many historic challenges here in Vermont right before us. They've plagued us for decades, but we have an opportunity to transform that today if we put partisanship aside and then work together and focus on these three guiding principles: grow the economy, make Vermont more affordable, and protect the most vulnerable. We'll be successful.
Thank you to both of our candidates. This concludes the debate with the candidates for governor on Vermont Public. Thank you to Democratic candidate Brenda Siegel from Newfane and Republican incumbent Governor Phil Scott. Join us again on Thursday, October 20th, when my colleague Connor Cyrus will moderate the debate for Lieutenant Governor with Republican State Senator Joe Benning and Progressive Democrat David Zuckerman. You can still send in your questions for that debate by emailing vote@vermontpublic.org. The Vermont Public Debates are produced by Matthew Smith, David Littlefield, Brian Stevenson, Kiana Haskin, Kyle Ambusk, Kaylee Mumford, Mike Dunn, David Rice, Frank Allwine, Peter Anguish, and Jen Jarecki. I'm Mikaela Lefrak. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch up again soon.